Thank you all for joining us today for the online exhibition for 68 to 86 Clapham Road. Throughout this presentation, you'll get to hear from the developers and other project team about the proposal, but this is very much a consultation event. The aim is to make sure that both you hear the proposals, but you get a chance to ask the questions you feel need to be asked, but also to give the feedback that you feel needs to be given. So throughout the presentation, there will be an opportunity towards the end to ask questions, and we'll go through it. I will just in a moment go through the technical things to make sure that if you are having problems hearing, you know what to do. At the end of the presentation today, after the questions, there will be a chance to provide feedback. This will show up, this will pop up on your screen as a form to provide feedback after the presentation closes. So please make sure that you don't automatically close your presentation once we say goodbye. Once we say goodbye, keep your screen open, and what will happen is a feedback form will pop up on your screen. Obviously, in normal times, we would be having this as a room where you could come and meet personally with the project team, the architects and the owners of the property to ask them questions and see banners. We are not living in normal times, and that is why we've decided to have an online exhibition. It's important for us that no matter when we are, which times we are, that you, the local community, have a chance to be consulted on the proposals well in advance of a application being submitted to the council. So for today's plans, we are just doing a bit of housekeeping now for the next few minutes. We'll then move on to the presentation, and then we'll have chance for question and answer session towards the end of the session. Right, just in terms of a bit of housekeeping, you can enter. It's far better for you on your screen to be able to enter it as full screen. So on the screen here under step 1, you can see what you need to do to enter it as full screen. To ask a question, please press the question button, which is shown here, and under the banner section, you will be able to download this presentation. Questions will be answered at the end. Please type in the questions and they will be shown up on the screen. They'll show up for us to have a look at, and then we'll answer them at the end. Unfortunately, because of the number of people attending this, we can't have this as a speaking event, otherwise there'd be far too many speaking. But please do type in your questions and they will be answered. I know there have been a number of questions already submitted. We will start with those and then move on to the presentation. So your presenters today, Evan McDonald from Melt Property Developer. Evan, do you want to say hello?
Just unmuting my mic. Hi there, how are you?
Okay, thank you, Evan. Ollie?
Hi there, Oliver Lowry, Director at Ackroyd Lowry, with the architects that have worked with Melt Property on this project.
Okay, Victoria?
Hi there, I'm Victoria Chase. I'm from WSP Indigo, and I'm the planning consultant working with Melt Properties on this development.
Okay, and I'm Sachin Shah from Curtin & Co, and we are running today's exhibition. So I'm now going to hand over to Evan to be able to explain who Melt Property are.
Hi, so my name's Evan McDonald. I'm the founder and CEO of Melt Property. We're a group of property development and investment companies. The company was originally formed in 2002 as Melt Homes. We started doing residential property development in Gloucestershire at that time. Since then, we've built over 100 properties in London, Gloucestershire and Kent, with values of over £25 million. We've rebranded or changed our focus to the apart hotel sector, or to commercial property development, with a particular focus on the apart hotel sector in the last couple of years. And so in order to reflect that focus, we've rebranded from Melt Homes to Melt Property. We use a philosophy in our developments that we call design-led development, and that's really about ensuring that the schemes that we deliver provide maximum benefit to those who use them. So we look to make the spaces, we orient the spaces around the way in which those developments are used. And we sum that up by saying that we aim to deliver inspiring buildings that make a positive impact on the places they're built in and which are designed around the way people live their lives. This project is a partnership with an investment fund called Espalier Ventures, and Espalier Ventures have investments in a number of areas, including real estate. Those include international higher education, social impact, and leisure, alongside their real estate lines of business. What we're aiming to deliver here is a new 145-room apart hotel. So an apart hotel is different to a hotel in that the rooms contain kitchenettes, and they're designed for people to stay for longer lengths of time. The average stay length is generally 3 to 5 days rather than 1 to 2 nights like you might have with a hotel. The development will also contain a cafe within the apart hotel, which will be open to the public. We are proposing 8 affordable homes which will be available for local residents. There will also be on the ground floor an office space, which will include office/co-working space, which will include some affordable space, which is designed to enable businesses starting up to get up and going in a cost-effective way. There'll also be improvements to the existing Europcar facility. The parking will go into the basement, which will make it much more secure. We'll be delivering electric car charging points there, and obviously the new Europcar office, which will be facing onto Clapham Road, will be much more attractive. So this will bring what is currently a relatively unattractive site into use. It'll provide employment. We're providing local homes and protecting local homes, I think, via the bringing in the apart hotel. We'll talk a bit more about that later. It'll provide safety improvements. You won't have an open site where people can simply walk onto the site, and there have been some security problems that's caused in the past. We're providing some open, affordable homes and office space. And the key thing, I think, from our perspective, is that this development will be sustainable. So we've put a lot of thought into how to deliver something that's environmentally friendly. So we'll be including innovative technologies like ground source heating, solar panels, and batteries, and the combination of those 3 things should enable us to deliver a development that's not only carbon neutral, but also potentially energy neutral. So that's a brief overview of what it is that we're proposing. Just one other thing I wanted to say before I hand on to Victoria to talk about what we're proposing in a bit more detail. We are not a developer who looks to get planning permissions and then just flip sites or sell them on. We've never done that. Not at any point in our history. What we do is we buy sites, we get planning consents, and we focus on design because we want to build buildings that we're proud of, and we develop those planning consents out. So this is not a situation where we're looking to get a planning consent in place and sell the site. We fully intend to develop the site out. We have a tenant lined up for the apart hotel, an apart hotel operator called Room 2, and we'll talk a bit more about them later in the presentation. So hopefully that was a useful introduction, and I'll hand over to Victoria now to cover the a bit more detail on the application itself.
Thank you, Evan. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned before, I'm Victoria Chase. I'm the planning consultant working with the project team on this site. So the site in which we're referring to is number 6886 Clapham Road. So the image here just shows the sign of the site etched in red. This is currently occupied at ground floor level by Europcar, which is just this part here. The site also includes to the north a 4-storey residential dwelling, which consists of 3 family-sized dwellings. Directly to the north of the site are a terrace of listed buildings, and the site falls in the Clapham Road conservation area. In general, the site is surrounded by a mix of homes as well as commercial units. It's also considered to be an edge of centre location because you've got the oval local centre to the north of the site, and it just some of it's just not quite hitting the slide, but it kind of runs along here. Which also includes a number of different retailers, restaurants and commercial uses, office space. In terms of the accessibility of the site, it's in close proximity to Oval Underground Station, which is to the north, and Stockwell Underground Station, which is to the south. They're about 5 to 10 minutes walk between the two. There are also a number of bus stops, which just kind of pointed out on this as well. You can see the bus stops directly outside the site. In terms of the history of the site, there has been a previous permission, which was for the Europcar to be retained. So these images here are the former permission on the site. It was Europcar on the ground floor with a 3-storey extension for residential dwellings. There are approximately 32 residential dwellings. That permission has now lapsed, so there is no permission on this site. The history of the site going further back, it was formed as part of the 4-storey Georgian Terrace housing that was facing onto Clapham Road. And in around the 1920s, the site was cleared for an entrance to the London Terminal coach station. And there's just some images here which shows what the coach station looked like. Unfortunately, the site was bombed in the Second World War, which left it open, and it looks like it was previously used as a petrol station, but now is, as you know, operated by Europcar, the renting company. Given the surrounding area and the current use of the site, the project team have looked closely into how the site can be used more efficiently and effectively, and that also benefit the community. So just quickly going over what the proposal is for, which Evan touched upon earlier. It's for a 145-room apart hotel, a public cafe. We are providing 8 affordable homes, so replacing the 3 that we're knocking down, and 5 of these homes will be family-sized 3-bedroom homes, also providing modern office / co-working space, with some of it as affordable office space, which will be available to local businesses and residents. We're also improving the Europcar office, so that will be retained, and we're providing a secure basement area for them to put park their cars, their rented cars and vans. And that will include electric charging points, moving on with their business model to be more sustainable. We're also ensuring that entrance for the commercial uses will be at the frontage. Ollie will show some images later on what that will look like. So there will be only entrances for the commercial units fronting onto Clapham Road. The main entrance for the basement level is also off Clapham Road, so Europcar will only be off Clapham Road. The 8 dwellings that we're proposing will front Palfrey Place, with a pedestrian access off this road. That we're not providing any car parking for any other users other than Europcar and the apart hotel. So this scheme will be a car-free scheme. So therefore residents cannot, we're not allowing residents to park on site, nor will we allow them to apply for a permit to park on some of the surrounding roads. In terms of the benefits of the scheme, we're looking to bring an underused site back into use, generate about 60 new jobs on the site, and also retaining the existing jobs on there, providing much needed affordable housing for the borough, provide affordable co-working office space for local businesses, community groups, to improve the design of the area, making it more attractive, providing a new cafe at street level, which can also be used by the public, and discouraging this will also, the apart hotel will also discourage existing homes from being used for Airbnb by freeing up residential accommodation for local residents. We're also looking at improving the safety of the area from crime, and also providing a very highly sustainable development. Just on the next slides, just like to show some images just of what we're proposing. So the first image is the apart hotel room, or an example of what it would look like. The other image is a CGI showing the residential block of Palfrey Place. This third image here is what we consider would be an affordable office workspace and what we're trying to achieve on the site. And you know, Europcar will be on the site. And also there's also going to be quite a significant amount of green space within the development, which is going to be between the buildings off Clapham Road and Palfrey Place. I'm now going to pass you on to Ollie Lowry, who is the architect, and will discuss the proposed design of the building in relation to its surrounding area.
Thanks, Victoria. We have been working with Melt Properties for the past couple of years on this design and liaising with Lambeth's planning department through a series of pre-applications to really develop a design that's appropriate for the site and will add benefit to the area. The two sort of main things that we thought about when we were designing this is that firstly, this is a real gap in the conservation area. And you know, the history of that Victoria has explained, but at the moment, you know, when you look down Clapham Road, it is a bit of an eyesore. There's graffiti, there's, you know, quite dilapidated buildings. So we have an opportunity here to stitch up the conservation area, and so that really is our main cue. The second thing that we are able to do with this scheme is to offer some active frontage. So this is a part of Clapham Road that doesn't really have much street frontage, you know, the activity that kind of enlivens the street. And so we have an opportunity to create that and offer kind of, you know, this cafe kind of overlooking the street and really adding something back to that experience for the people, you know, that walk past. So in terms of our response to the conservation area, you can see that we've carefully analysed the buildings around us to understand their geometry, the things that make these kind of handsome buildings worthy of being in a conservation area. We've sort of analysed, and it's all about the proportions, the materials. And so our design, you can see this is how we sort of evolved our process to make sure that everything we do kind of aligns to rhythm and the proportions of these handsome buildings. Let's go to the next slide. Session, technical question.
Yes.
To the next.
Okay, I'll move you on.
Thank you. Apologies for that. So in terms of the way that we've developed the proposal, not just in terms of the rhythm, but in terms of the overall massing, you can see the top left slide shows the extent of our site. So we're removing the buildings that are on the site. The top right-hand image then shows that essentially we're extending the terraces. So all of the lines, all the heights of the blocks are going to be responding to the buildings surrounding our development. We're then linking up those two blocks and retaining these two central courtyards, which add opportunities for vegetation, for natural daylight and ventilation to be brought into the scheme. And then we're putting an additional story on top, which will be set so far back that from walking down Clapham Road, it won't, and Palfrey Place, that additional story won't be visible. Session, could you do the next slide? Sorry, I don't think to. Thank you very much. So as Evan mentioned, sustainability is one of our key credentials of the development, and certainly my background is in passive house and low energy design, and so it's really great to have a client in Melt Property that really understands the ethos of this. So these two courtyards are going to be kind of lush, and this vegetation is going to provide, you know, a great amenity space, but also you can see the opportunity here to naturally ventilate and daylight our spaces. And so, you know, the most important thing when you're doing a low energy building is to take a fabric first approach. So we've got high levels of insulation, excellent materials, and that does a lot of the work. And then, as Evan mentioned, I think also opportunities to have on-site renewables to kind of top up and get us to a carbon neutral or energy neutral position. So this is the existing view looking down Clapham Road, and really when you see it in that context, you can see how much of a gap it is, and also how antisocial behaviour like graffiti is in evidence on Clapham Road. So the next slide will show our proposal, which you can see really stitches up the fabric of the conservation area and reads very much, you know, as a continuation of this language, this articulation. On the next slide, you'll see, looking from down Crudesome Road, this is a longer view. This is a view that, so these are verified views the planners have requested that we produce, which are by an independent kind of consultant. They take our design and they create a verified view. So they're, you know, they use accurate measurements to prove to the planners, to prove to us that this is the actual view that you will get. Although it obviously is a CGI. And you can see here again the gap that we are stitch up, and the next slide shows our proposal. So when you are this far back down Crudesome Road, you can in fact just start to see that top story, but as you can imagine, walking down Clapham Road, you don't see this. And I think this view demonstrates well that although we are using, you know, detailing that's modern and contemporary, in fact the form of the building responds very much to the conservation area, the Georgian architecture either side of it. This is then Palfrey Place, a much lower scale development, and I think we're starting to use slightly more contemporary language as we come around the back, away from the kind of the listed facades of the Georgian building.
Okay.
Session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ollie. So just before we take questions, and I know a number of questions have come in, I'll just go through what the next steps are. So later this month, Melt Properties will be submitting the planning application, and the importance of that was we were absolutely keen to ensure that this consultation event took place before that application went in, so you, the local community, have a chance both to hear the proposals but also provide your comments, feedback, and, you know, if possible, how that works for you. We then expect a decision by the council late summer, early autumn. Now, obviously, in normal times, there is a set timeline for these decisions to be made. It is not normal times. The council is doing a lot of things it normally doesn't do, and it's not doing things that it normally does do, and that's no criticism of the council. We totally understand that its priority has to be the response to Corona. So these are all indicative timelines, and we'll have to see in terms of how the council operates over the next few months. Subject to the council granting planning permission, we expect construction to start early in 2021, and autumn, second half of 2022, the building will be completed and ready for those to move in. Again, this is entirely what we think happens, but all these are subject to change depending on the external environment, depending on what the council says and what it does. So we're now going to move into questions. There are a number of questions that were sent in prior to today's explanation, and I know there have been a number of questions that have come in after. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the questions that have come in before, and then we'll move on to the questions that have come in through the presentation. And many of the questions are similar in nature, so I will try and group them. So if your question isn't quite exactly asked, it might be because it's similar and the answer would be the same to another question. So we're going to start by asking Victoria about the affordable properties, and who will they be available to, and will they be available to people who live or work in the area?
Yes, so it will be the affordable housing will be allocated by Lambeth Council, who will have a waiting list of people who are in need of these affordable homes. So it will be affordable housing in Lambeth Borough.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. I wonder, Ollie, if you can answer a question. We've got a question about why was the decision taken not to stick to the Georgian style architecture as per the conservation area?
Sorry, muted myself. I hope through that presentation that it was clear that we've deeply respected the Georgian architecture that surrounds us, but as designers in the 21st century of a modern contemporary building, we think it's important that we reflect both the traditional and the modern, and we've paid a huge amount of respect to the buildings surrounding us, but we're trying to create a carbon neutral modern development to last another 100 years, and it was a decision that was taken not just by ourselves but by Lambeth planners, that being respectful, using the same materials, the same articulation, but actually the details being more contemporary was the appropriate solution for this site. And I hope that people understand that journey that we've gone on to get to these outcomes. And also, if you see it from from the longer views that we showed previously, it really, you can see that the rhythm and the materials kind of blend it in much more than this close-up view that we're now looking at.
Okay, thank you. And Victoria, we've had a number of questions specifically around vehicle access to Palfrey Place. So will there be any? How will the entrance and exit take place? And what will be the access to facilities on Palfrey Place? I wonder if you can answer those.
Yep, sure. So the commercial units will have access off Clapham Road, particularly on the image in front of us. There is the access point down into the basement for Europcar, which I'm highlighting currently, which is facing onto Clapham Road. Servicing for these commercial units will also be off Clapham Road. In terms of access for Palfrey Place, this will just be for the residential unit or the residential occupiers of the residential units. So there won't be any access available for the commercial units.
Okay, thank you very much. And in that same vein, under Evan, there's been a couple of questions around construction traffic. I wonder if you could talk about that and how that's going to be managed.
Yeah, so sorry, which specific question session do you mean?
So it's particularly about Palfrey Place and construction traffic, but generally there's been wider questions as well.
Yes, okay. So we clearly, because Palfrey Place is a relatively quiet mews and it's a small street, we would aim to minimise the amount of construction traffic that goes down Palfrey Mews or Palfrey Place. There will be some construction traffic that needs to come in on that side to build the building, but clearly it will be most convenient for us to use Clapham Road wherever possible, and it will be most appropriate given that it's a busier road. What we intend to do in order to minimise the impact from construction, and clearly there will be some impact, but we'll look to make it as minimal as possible, is to use modular construction to build this development. So the likely timescale would involve demolition, excavation of the site to create the basement. There would be about 6 months of groundworks to create the basement and first floor podium, and then we should be able to get the rest of the building up very quickly using modular. The modules can be manufactured off-site, and so we would anticipate being able to complete the construction of the building using modular in less than 12 months. It may even be possible to do it a little quicker than that. And normally with traditional construction, you'd be looking at probably 18 months for something like this.
Great, thank you. And Evan, while you're talking about Palfrey Place, we've had a number of questions about ownership of the land, especially the area currently used for parking, and whether that is owned by yourself and what your plans are for that.
Yeah, so we own most of the land to the rear of the building. There's a small strip of land that's owned by an adjoining landowner. We're in negotiations with that landowner If those negotiations prove to be unsuccessful, then we'll need to modify that aspect, because clearly we can't build on somebody else's land without their consent. However, there's nothing stopping us from putting a planning application in. You can put a planning application in on land belonging to an adjoining owner without their consent. If we were unable to reach agreement with that landowner, and clearly that's not just up to us, that's up to the adjoining landowner as well. So people have to be able to agree terms in order to reach agreement, then we'd need to modify that aspect. But hopefully we'll get that agreement and be able to incorporate that small strip of land as pavement at the rear.
Great, thank you, Evan. And before I move on to other people, I wonder if you can talk about the cafe and what your vision is for it. Will that be something that anyone can access, or just those using the apart hotel?
Yeah, so the cafe will be part of the apart hotel, and the apart hotel operator that we're working with on this is called Room 2. They're a really nice, friendly company. They're a smallish apart hotel operator. They have a very quirky concept that I think will really add to the community feel of the proposal. They're very keen for their cafe and their downstairs spaces to be active. And so that means that they're open to residents of the area, or anyone who wants to use the space. It tends to have a sort of a co-working / cafe feel to it. Very much, they're pet friendly, by the way, which is nice, so people can bring their dogs or I suppose cats in. And actually, having been down to their Southampton facility, a number of people had dogs with them when we were there. It is very much a community feel. Their model is called the Hometel, and so the whole thinking behind the model is to make people feel as if when they're staying in a Room 2, it's a home away from home, and the communal spaces and the cafe are designed with that in mind.
I think
designed and operated.
Can I add a little bit on that as well, just because I was skimming through the questions that have been submitted, which is really great. There's been such a good level of engagement, and I think one of the concerns is that the cafe sort of becomes a bit of a white elephant. But I think because it's combined with the workspace as well, there's always going to be a demand for people going backwards and forwards between the workspace, which is has affordable bits and the local community, and this cafe. So it's not going to sit kind of empty as just part of the hotel.
Great, thank you for that. And Evan, I wonder if you could just talk a bit about apart hotels, exactly how long people stay in them for, and exactly how that will operate.
Yeah, so typical stay length in an apart hotel is 3 to 5 nights, whereas with a traditional hotel it's 1 to 2 nights. They tend to be used by people, it's a combination of business and leisure, but I think people who are working in an area, say during the week, and maybe want to go home in the weekend, will maybe come and stay for 4 or 5 days. And they have facilities in them which people can use to, say, for example, cook their own food. The rooms are larger, so that they don't have to be eating out at restaurants the whole time. So it's really designed to make people feel as if it's a home away from home. We think that's important because it will provide an alternative to Airbnb type serviced accommodation in the area, and should reduce the attractiveness of that sort of use to other people in the area. There's a lot of illegal Airbnb use going on in London generally. So I think that in itself will help free up residential properties for their proper use as homes. And I think also it will be helpful for local residents to have somewhere for friends or family to come and stay that's nearby. Spaces at a bit of a premium in London. If you live near the site, then unless you've got a huge house, you probably don't have a lot of spare room for friends or family to come and stay. And so this provides somewhere that people can stay for a longer period of time and feel comfortable as a home away from home. The question was asked actually by a chap called Manuel Mazzoni about whether or not there will be a discount for local residents on stays at the apart hotel. It's a really good idea, actually. It's something that hadn't occurred to us, and it's something that we can take up with the apart hotel operator. I think they would be quite keen to look at that as a way of making this proposal, increasing the attractiveness of this proposal to the local community. So thank you for that, ma'am. We'll definitely take that one up with Room 2.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to just flick through the questions that have been submitted through the presentation. I won't ask all of them because some of them have been answered by previous questions or as the presentation's moved on. In terms of access to the courtyard for the tenants, will the tenants have access to that courtyard? Who wants to take that? Evan?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Evan, do you want to do that?
Sorry, the tenants.
Yes.
Do you mean the residential, the occupiers of the affordable homes?
That's right. Yes.
Ollie, what was the intention from a design perspective on that one?
Well, at the moment it's off the hotel, the apart hotel, but that's because of the current configuration of the sort of staircases. It's not through a particular, it's not. That's just a design. That's why I didn't want to answer the question on your behalf, because I think if there was a way of allowing it, you could allow access to people that were part of the the workspace or the residents or both, but the current access is via the hotel core.
Yeah, so on the basis that that would be accessible via the cafe, etc., in the apart hotel, I don't see why not. We hadn't really thought through what the formal, right-of-way type arrangements for those homes would be, but I don't see any problem with the principle of allowing them access to those roof spaces. It's something that we'd need to work into our agreement with the apart hotel operator, but I think the answer to that one is we hadn't really thought it through from a building and construction perspective, because it's just something that happens after that. I think what we need to take that away as feedback and look to incorporate it into the proposal. I think it's a good idea. It's something that we should support.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just skipping through because a number of the next questions have been answered. So probably a question for Ollie or Victoria about the minimum space standards for the apart hotel, how that's been created, and then maybe for Evan, how the new jobs will be. What's the breakdown of the 60 jobs provided? Part-time, full-time, etc. So I'm going to start with Oliver or Victoria on exactly the standards within the apart hotel.
So I'm guessing from the question that they were interested in the residential as well, but I'll do them all. So the space standards for the hotel, so apart hotel rooms tend to be much larger than your average hotel room. So we're well in excess of, so the standard hotel room's about 17 square meters and ours are between 20 and 30 square meters. So they're, the larger ones are basically the size of a studio flat, and the smaller ones are larger than a standard hotel room. In terms of the residential accommodation, we're in excess of the London plan, the London plan guidance, and one of the reasons for that is because there's 3 residential units on site at the moment, which we are replacing effectively, and those are larger than the London plan, so we're replacing those with ones that are the same size, in fact slightly larger, and then the rest of them are just they're policy compliant to the London plan.
Sorry, and just to add the question on use of the roof gardens, the flats also have their own amenity space. The residential units also have their own amenity space, so they do already have some gardens behind them.
Okay, Victoria, there's a question about I don't understand why the fascia can look so different from the rest of the building in a conservation area.
I think that's probably a design point from Ollie, but I think Ollie answered a similar question about taking account into the surrounding areas and mixing a historic design with a more modern contemporary design.
Yeah, I just want to add, like, I mean, the wonderful thing about architecture in London is that conservation. I like working in conservation areas more than I like working in other areas. But and that's because the policy wording on a conservation area is that you have to enhance it, but you don't have to mimic it, and that's, I think that's an important, as an architect, a pastiche is not exciting for me, but also I think that the opportunity, the wonderful thing about conservation area is you have to respond to what's around you, and you have to do that in an intelligent way. But I don't, copying old architecture isn't appropriate. It's not, it's not certainly not what Lambeth planners want. Design is a very subjective thing, but conservation areas don't demand that you copy the buildings next to them. They demand that you preserve and enhance the conservation areas by responding to the buildings around them, and that's an important distinction.
And just to add to what Ollie said there, I think what you tend to end up with if you just try and copy the existing Georgian architecture is a pastiche of that architecture, and it looks like what it is. It looks like somebody's tried to create something that is modern, that is a copy of something that's old. It doesn't really work. I think the objective here really is to try and create modern architecture that stands on its own merits, but fits in as well as possible with the surrounding architecture. And that's really what the Planning Authority encourages us to do. I think if we presented a scheme that was just a pastiche of the surrounding architecture, they wouldn't like it. And I don't think it would create anything that was interesting or inspiring. We believe we should design with the architecture of today, not try and replicate the architecture of yesterday. In the Victorian era, they didn't try and build Georgian buildings, and I don't think in the modern era we should try and build Victorian buildings or Georgian buildings either.
Okay, and I think there's just a couple of people asking for clarification on access on Palfrey Place. So just to confirm, that is just for pedestrian foot access. There is no parking for residential services, for those using the flats as their home.
I think just to add on to that, just to make it clear, Palfrey Place is accessible via cars anyway. We're not proposing to change the access. We're not making that street pedestrianised. That's not part of our proposal. I think there's just been a few confused comments, but to confirm, we are not proposing car parking spaces for the residents, nor and we're agreeing that the proposal will be car free. So residents will not be able to park their cars on site, nor will they be able to apply for a parking permit for the CPZs around in the surrounding roads. So we will be expecting residents to walk to their dwellings, their homes, or cycle.
Okay. Okay, that's. I think so. There have been a couple of questions about number of people attending. So we are doing 2 of these. So we do it for those listening, and you want to listen again, you're more than welcome to join us again at 3 o'clock. We're also doing. We've also written to resident associations to see if they want a separate meeting as well. So we are keen to ensure as many people as possible a part of this consultation event, and of course there will be a chance for people to comment when a plan is submitted as well. I think we have answered all the questions. I think they've all given.
Sorry, there are a couple actually. A session. There's one on employment. Okay. I think. Can I respond to that?
Yes, please do.
So the breakdown of the 60 jobs, 40 of those will be in the apart hotel. There are we're envisaging 5 to 10 for the office space, and then a further 10 in the Europcar facility. What we haven't included in that is the spin-off jobs that are created by servicing companies. So obviously there would be businesses operating in the co-working / office space, and there would be servicing companies for the apart hotel, etc. So that would have some other benefits, and we've not tried to estimate what those would be. There would also be potentially apprenticeships for local residents. That hopefully answers the question to the degree that we can on the breakdown of jobs. Yeah.
Great. Was there any other questions you want to answer?
There's a question on use class for Victoria.
What's the use class question? Sorry, I can't see it.
Okay,
well, I mean, I can answer it. Is it the same use class as
The apart hotel and hotels?
Yes.
That they are different. They are different uses. So a hotel falls under C3. A part hotel would be a sui generis.
Okay. I thank you all for those questions. I think that's that.
Sorry, Session. There are a couple more. One question was asked around trees and urban greening around the development. Just want to be clear that the proposed green roof areas and the landscaping at the front of the development will be included in the application. So if the application is approved, then that will commit us to delivering those elements. It isn't a question of us just showing nice pictures of trees on CGI images and then not including them in the application. That is something that we're very committed to, and it's particularly closely connected to the sustainability and environmentally friendly nature of the application. So just want to be clear that it's not, it's not something shown on a pretty picture. That's part of the design in the application.
Great. Thank you very much.
Can I pick a couple of others up, Session? Is that okay?
Yes, please do. If you just pick up all the ones that you think need.
I'll just flip through any that I think I can answer quickly. There's a question about the strip of land on Pelfrey Place at the rear. If we can't come to terms with the landowner, essentially what we'd end up doing is we'd have a strip there which doesn't have pavement on it, because unless we could agree to build on that landowner's land. We would probably look to modify the design in some other ways to step a little bit back from that piece of land as well. But hopefully we'll be able to agree terms, and we'd like to do that. The breakdown, somebody's asked for a breakdown of part-time and full-time employment. I don't have that, we don't have that right here and now, but it's something that we can provide, and I think it will be appropriate for us to answer that via email afterwards. Can we do that, Session?
Yeah, we can. We can do that, definitely.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so there are a few other quite detailed questions. I think people do seem quite concerned about the cafe, and I just want to reiterate that we are keen to, or that the plan is to make sure that that is an active use and available to the public, not just to the residents of the apart hotel. Just to take up the point on use class, I mean, an apart hotel can operate either under a C3 or a sui generis use class. However, at the end of the day, we are not proposing to, we're not working with a hotel operator on this. We're working with an apart hotel operator, and we're working with Room 2, and that'll be included within our proposals. So they might fall into the same use class, but people do stay for longer in apart hotels, and that's what's proposed here, not a hotel. Somebody asked about the number of residential properties that will have access from Pelfrey Place. That's a total of 8. And thank you for your kind comment, Manuel. Appreciate that. There's a question about asking how we can justify the change of use from its current use and C1 when the area is essentially a mix of small commercial and residential use. Well, at the moment the site is commercial, completely commercial, and our view is that what we're proposing to deliver is a significant improvement on what's there. I don't think anyone would disagree that the site's quite ugly at the moment, and so we've looked to deliberately include affordable homes for local residents. That's something that we're not obliged to do, but we want to do it because we're keen to work with the council and be a partner for them and for local residents. And we think the apart hotel use will be helpful and complementary for local residents for the reasons that we've previously covered.
And the Europcar's still on site. It's just in the basement. So that remains.
Yeah, it's remaining, but you know, with an improved and more secure facility.
And then affordable workspace as well. So it's, you know, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think there's lots of complementary uses to the current commercial use.
Yes, and just in terms of the cafe again, a few questions about it being a key part of the active frontage. That is built into the design. It will be part of the active frontage, and it will be something that we think will bring some life and activity to the area, as will the apart hotel and the co-working space.
Okay, I can see that some people are starting to leave now as time moves on. So I do want to start drawing this to closure. There's just a couple of final questions that come in. So there's a question about what stage is this planning application. So the answer is that this is in the stage we call pre-application. So no planning application has been submitted, and that will take place later this month. And the timetable set out that a decision will be made towards the end of the year. And there's again a question around the coffee house and the access to the public being formally agreed as a formal position. Is that correct, Evan? That will be agreed that it will be access to the public as well.
The cafe, sorry?
Yes, the cafe.
Yeah, no, definitely will be. I mean, Room 2 want to do that anyway, so there's no question that's what it's going to be, and that's what we'll be including in the planning application. Just one further thing on with the stage that the planning application's at, we should point out that we've already done 2 pre-application submissions to Lambeth Council, and we've modified the proposals in order to take their responses into account. This public consultation is really about getting feedback now from the public on the proposal so that we can refine them before we submit the application. So we've done a lot of consultation on this. We welcome people's feedback, and we want to hear what people have to say. And wherever we can, we'll take those comments into account. There've already been some great ideas that have come up as a result of this session.
Fantastic. On can we just
one question about the previous planning consent for the 32 residential flats? I think when we bought the site, it's a very unattractive consent, and actually it was not a very well thought through consent because it extended into parts of into land that the landowner didn't own, and so it was unable to be implemented. So it was an unimplementable consent, and it either has or will shortly expire in any event. But it wasn't very well thought through. It didn't make very efficient use of space on site. The design was dated and unattractive, and we really wanted to do a high quality scheme here. So we decided that we would put in a fresh application to achieve all of those things.
Great.
Sorry, by the way, if anyone wants more detail, there's a website which is 68 to 86 claphamroad.co.uk, and so that's got more detail and frequently asked questions and things on there that people can run through. And you're welcome to submit further questions or feedback via email. The email address is on their website.
Absolutely. And what we'll do is we'll update the question and answer session. We'll update the question and answer session. The question and answer on the website as with the questions that have come in today.
So it's worth us also saying on the active use point, the previous consent, it didn't have an active frontage. We felt that it was a real waste. It was basically just a big opening for vehicles to come in and out to park on the ground floor. And so what we've tried to do here is to bring activity back to the site and make it something that local residents can use. Great.
Okay, I'm going to wrap us up now because I know people are starting to leave. For those that want to know more, you can, as Evans pointed out, the website is www.68-86claphamroad.co.uk. You can submit more questions through there. We are very keen to get your feedback on these proposals, and for that reason, you will, when I close this exhibition, please do not close your browser. A questionnaire will pop up at the end of this. Please fill that in And if you have further questions, our contact details, my contact detail is there at the bottom. So please do phone me, text me, email me, or make comments on that feedback form. If you do have any other questions as well, use the website to do it. So can I thank you all very much for giving up your time in the middle of the day to come to this presentation. I am going to close the presentation down now, but please, for those taking part, please don't close down your browser, and please do answer the questions. That will be immensely helpful to us. Thank you very much.